Dear colleagues, good morning. We are now starting today's activity dedicated to the independent debates for the head of the public broadcaster. So we will be discussing and hearing information from some key candidates for this position. However, today this program is going to be quite intense. Apart from the candidates for this position, we're gonna have guests. And in this hybrid format, some of our guests will remain in the studio, and unfortunately, other friends, other colleagues will have to join us using Zoom platform. This activity has been organized by the Reanimation Package of Reforms, and it is also held with the help of the Media Freedom Support Project, funded by the Council of Europe and the Office of the Council of Europe in Ukraine. Today, we will have a few blocks of discussions, and I will introduce all of the participants. My name is Andrei Kulikov, and I am the Program Director of CSO Internews Ukraine. And I'll be delighted to host this very important event. And this is a very important event because we will have live debates and we will hear the main programs presented by them. We will feel how they see the future of the public broadcaster. They will also speak about the current state of affairs, but we have to officially launch this event. Therefore, I am inviting our speakers who are going to join us in Zoom. In the development of public broadcaster, the Council of Europe plays a very important role, and I'm inviting now Steen Orlov, head of the Council of Europe office in Ukraine. Steen, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you today at the independent debates of the candidates for the position of Head of Management Board of Ukrainian Public Broadcaster, the UAPBC. I would like to thank partners who contributed to the organization of this conference, the Coalition of Reanimation Package of Reforms, the Center for Democracy and Rule of Law, and also, of course, the public broadcaster and Detector Media who are providing the information support. Independent and financially stable public broadcaster reaching out to everyone at national and local levels is an indispensable prerequisite for democracy and democratic values. This is something that has been broadly recognized all around Europe and in most of the world as well. Public broadcasting in Ukraine, which is not influenced by financial groups or political parties, provides impartial and balanced news and serves as a source of quality journalism for all groups of population. This is, of course, especially important in a new era that we have witnessed, where disinformation and not only pandemia, but also infodemia is suddenly become new words that we have to relate to and new sources of, challenges to democracy that we have to deal with. It's important to keep up the dynamics and direction of the reform and to continue to strengthen the public broadcaster as an independent democratic institution. I would also like, and this is my second meeting with the public broadcaster, I would also like to welcome the results and successes of the UAPBC achieved in the last 4 years from its establishment, despite a period where finance has been a challenge. The news of public broadcaster correspond to criteria of quality news, and also the development of a digital platform is remarkable. The UA Pershi TV Canal provided neutral and balanced coverage of local elections last year. As you, I only saw it from afar, you were here, of course. UAPBC is providing media content for national minorities, internally displaced persons, content for people with disabilities, as well as the residents in the border territories. The strategic documents have been developed with the Council of Europe projects support on broadcasting for children and youth audience, and the gender equality policy has also been developed. This is the core of public service, I would like to say, in any country, is that it's broadened out in order to include everyone. It's not only going for the areas where there is financial gain to be had, but actually seeks to get correct and balanced information to all groups of society, ages, and despite disabilities and so on. This is an extremely important part of having an inclusive society. The Council of Europe recommendation devotes significant attention to this, therefore, and establish high standards for remit, governing bodies, editorial independence, financing, and assets, or obviously also gender equality. According to the standards of independence is a key requirement of public service media. The rules on management boards of public broadcasters, especially their membership, should be defined in a manner which avoids placing the boards at risk of any political or other interference. These rules should, in particular, stipulate that the members of a management board or persons assuming such functions in an individual capacity, and now comes the criteria, exercise their functions strictly in the interest of the public service broadcasting organization, which they represent and manage. They may not directly or indirectly exercise functions, receive payment, or hold interests in enterprises or other organizations in media or media-related sectors where this would lead to a conflict of interest with the management functions which they exercise in their public service broadcasting organization. And thirdly, may not receive any mandate or take instructions from any person or body whatsoever other than the bodies or individuals responsible for the supervision of the public service broadcasting organization in question, subject to the exceptional cases which obviously should be provided for by law and thereby through a democratic process of parliament. Also, independence of the supervisory boards is extremely important. Once appointed, members of the supervisory board should perform their task in an independent manner, and they should not be perceived as representatives of the parliament or any political faction of any kind. In addition to good legislation in force, it is necessary to ensure that the implementation is done in line with the law and that there is no political interference with the independence of the public service media, and that sufficient funding is granted to fulfill its mission. This is, of course, always an issue and will probably remain an issue, but it's also important that this is continuously debated. I wish you a fruitful discussion today, and as always, we've all been candidates from time to time. Good luck to all of you. We hope that the debate will contribute to more independent, transparent, and a more open competition process for the media. So also to you, Andri, that you will get a good board to overlook what you are doing. And I would like to pass the word back to you, and looking forward to hear the distinguished speaker from the RADA give his introduction to today's debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nurlov, for your opening remarks and for all your support and all your efforts for the development of free and independent media in Ukraine. З нами був Стен Ньорлов, голова Офісу Ради Європи в Україні.
So this was Stan Norlov, head of the Council of Europe office in Ukraine, and Mr. Nurlov just reminded us that transparency and openness of all the processes that shape up the public broadcaster are very important for supporting democratic standards. Besides, there is one more organization which is very important for the media and for the public broadcaster, because this institution directly impacts the funding of this organization, apart from many other things. So, with great pleasure, I'm going to invite Miketa Poturaev, who is the chair of Parliamentary Committee on Humanitarian and Information Policy. Miketa, now you have the floor. Dear colleagues, dear friends, good morning. I hope you can hear me very well. I truly hope that during my time in office, the Ukrainian parliament will not be playing that much of a role in the life of the public broadcaster if we will be able to adopt the legislation for new financing mechanisms. And in this way, the public broadcaster will be able to shed that burden and the links between the Ukrainian parliament and the broadcaster. And in the nearest future, we hope that we will be able to amend the law on public broadcaster. And these amendments have been already drafted by independent media experts, by lawyers, along with the donor organizations, and also along with the management board of the public broadcaster. And with this, we will be able to improve the operations of the public broadcaster. I am very pleased to take part in this very important event, and the independent debates of the candidates for the position of the head of management board of public broadcaster are very important for the media environment, for the public, and for civil society, and for the public broadcaster as well. Because I'm sure that there will be some news highlights, some publications in the media about this. Because I believe that generally, as a civil society, we do not pay much attention to the public broadcaster and to the developmental issues. And we do not talk much about the results of the public broadcaster. So I think the civil society is supposed to start doing this and focus more on this kind of work. We have to put the public broadcaster in the spotlight of the media, of the public. Therefore, this is indeed an outstanding event, and I'm very happy that we have it today. No matter who's going to become the head of management board, that individual will face a lot of issues. Zurab Alasania has completed colossal amount of work, and I think that we all owe him our thanks and gratitude, because when it all began, I am, as a media person, as a TV person, I had doubts that somebody will be able to reform this obsolete post-Soviet mechanism of TV and radio broadcaster, which was far, far behind. And that's what I thought at the time. Nevertheless, the supervisory board, the management board, with the help of our international friends and partners, were able to complete this amazing work. Of course, many of us are not happy with the results in terms of the coverage, the audience. That is true. But we all have to remember that we all started from scratch, from the clean slate. And if you begin from the clean slate, any kind of results have to be evaluated from a different perspective, right? Any kind of result, any kind of achievement has to be multiplied by 10. That's how we should assess the results. Therefore, I believe that today we all have to say that the public broadcaster Suspilne is a success. That is a win that we all now have. Now, speaking about other things which are important and also complicated, this project needs to develop further. It must become sustainable and it has to enjoy sustainable development because there was this huge problem in the beginning. We solved it. Now we have another problem. It demands a lot of responsibility. It's a new problem which we have to address. And I believe that, not as a politician, and I emphasize this, as a TV person, as a media person, I believe that all these efforts will have to aim at solving this problem, this very important challenge. And I will be following closely the debates, and I will be looking at this process through this lens. I will emphasize this once again. How do we make sure that this public broadcaster, and unlike somebody else, I'm not expecting explosive growth. Not at all. But as an expert in this field, I know that we have to be realistic. We have to plan based on some realistic information. So we have to get sustainable development, incremental, sustainable development. We can do this, I think. And that's the criteria, that's the lens I will be using to look at today's debates. So I think that this is quite a surmountable task. And everyone who applied to become the head of management board, I wish all of them success. I've looked through the bios of everyone, and I think that all of them are decent people, high quality people, and no matter who's going to win, I think that candidate will be able to cope with this very important assignment. And for me, that is a number one challenge for Suspilne, for the public broadcaster. So this ends my quick presentation. I wish everybody success. Thank you so much. Well, speaking about financial model, we will have that discussion later today. And we will be talking about relationships between Suspilne and the Ukrainian parliament, because there is a separate section in our agenda about stakeholder relationships. And we will have a discussion of that. Thank you, Nikita Poturaev, and he is the head of the Parliamentary Committee for Information Policy. So I'd like to thank for cooperation. And we have accomplished so many good things together. So I think that that will become a solid foundation for new legislation, which is now being worked on. So we all know very well how important the public broadcaster is. But we have to remind ourselves once again why so much attention is paid to this important project.
Мовнику, чому суспільний мовник настільки особливий і чим він вирізняється від всіх інших гравців.
In what way public service broadcaster is different from other broadcasters? And series of brief video was prepared, welcoming addresses of ambassadors of European countries, our partners. Importance of public broadcaster for democratic governance and democratic values. I invite you now to show the video address from Swedish ambassador, Mr. Todor Tiber. Please, attention on the screen.
A democratic media landscape has to be both free and independent. Freedom of media is guaranteed by the plurality of different actors, television stations, radio stations, and so on. But a democratic media landscape also has to be independent. Public broadcasting is the only way to guarantee a truly independent media landscape. Public broadcasting is free from influence both from politics and from commercial interests, and that is why we believe that public broadcasting is an absolutely necessary condition for a media landscape which is both free and independent. Public broadcasting in Sweden enjoys stable ratings. They're not necessarily the highest ratings, but several studies have shown that public broadcasting in Sweden enjoys exceptionally high levels of trust among the general public. Not only is public broadcasting the most trusted media outlet, it is more trusted than other institutions, both commercial and public, in Sweden. Public broadcasting in Ukraine might not enjoy the highest ratings compared to other media outlets, but successive studies have shown that in challenging times, in times of political polarization, or in times of pandemic, the general public trusts public broadcasting more than other media outlets. This trust has proven a huge asset to Ukraine in times when its resilience is tested from within and from without. I hope that the trust that the Ukrainian public places in public broadcasting will continue to grow over time, and that the political establishment in Ukraine will provide the support to public broadcasting in Ukraine that it needs and deserves. From the Swedish side, our support to public broadcasting in Ukraine will continue.
Ми побачили звернення посла Швеції.
We have seen the address of Swedish ambassador to Ukraine to this Tibor. It's not by chance that we studied this trip throughout different countries from Sweden, because it's just in Sweden that public broadcaster has extremely high trust. It's very well developed. It's a very good example. Most of other commercial broadcast, envy public broadcaster. And we hope that big media groups in Ukraine will envy public broadcaster, because public broadcaster has trust, has big audience, has budget, and is creative. It has all other components that are important for the life and existence of media community. So what shall we discuss today? We shall discuss the future. But we cannot discuss future plans without understanding where we are now. Therefore, it's my great pleasure to get to know our guests whom we invited to our studio. Some of them are here, some of them will be in the Zoom. We shall speak about achievements of public broadcaster and challenges for the future period. And main thing, what has been done, and what are the problems we have in society. Of course, the current head of management of the board, Mr. Zurabalzania, knows it the best. Also, we have here the member of the National Council of Ukrainian Television and Radio Broadcasting, Madam Tetiana Rudenko, the Denis Denisenko, Executive Director of the Coalition of Reanimation Package of Reforms. Welcome, Denis. And Igor Roskladai, he is joining us via Zoom, Deputy Director, Leading Expert on Media Law, Center for Democracy and the Rule of Law. We welcome you. So, what shall we be discussing? What could you achieve from zero? Which peaks we have reached? And the main thing, what else have we to resolve? What else should we do to transfer to the next leadership of the public broadcaster. We don't know to what extent the new leadership, the new management will be radical. So we start from the Lasagna, please. Your assessment of achievements and challenges. So each of you have 10 minutes. Thank you. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Yeah, here. Okay. Thank you, Andrei. I welcome Mr. Steve Neuro and Mikita Poturayev. Steve, thank you for reminding us how important public broadcast in Ukraine is. And I want to thank Mikita for the wish that public broadcast also reach Verkhovna Rada. Mikita, I am glad to see you healthy. As regards the achievements, written achievements of public broadcast, actually, you said we started from zero. We started from less than zero. We should start from the context. What has started from 2017 or 2014? Now we're discussing the competition and the future public broadcaster. But somehow strangely, all that has transferred into a kind of queer dilemma. Not all achievements, maybe not so much achievements, but all work done is devalued. 4 years have passed. Nobody remembers, maybe, apart from experienced people like Poturayev. They don't remember what was there 4 years ago. And people ask, what are your outcomes? 4 years passed, you should have great success. If you don't have great success, that means you have not done anything. Therefore, talking about achievements, you must remind you what we had back in 2017 and then speak what we have now in 2020. So please show my presentation. And to describe all that, I need 4 or 5 hours of your time. And that will not probably be enough. If you are doing some work, there should be a result. But I want to insist again, this is the result that shows the trend of development, the dynamic and speed of development, and the direction where we are moving. Okay, let us be achievements. 4 years. First achievement is absolute independence. Every media group, especially journalists of our media group, envy our journalists because nobody never dictates to journalists of public broadcaster what to do and what to say. They do it themselves. And Swedish ambassador showed the high rate of trust to public broadcasting. And second important achievement, dignity, fair attitude, integrity in financial matters, in political matters, in journalist matters. This is peculiar for public broadcaster, maybe not the entire scheme, but for media company. Each time our company faces kind of hurdles with integrity, I think that all citizens of Ukraine feel these hurdles with integrity. So please show my presentation. Only 18 slides. So next, please. I shall try to switch it myself. I show you the structure, how we were changing from 2017 to 2020. First, it was a state TV radio company, 24 regional companies. They were legal entities. They had director generals. Then it became national TV radio company of Ukraine, NTKU. And now we have many channels, national broadcast, UA First, UA Culture, UA Crimea, Digital, and have different branches, regional broadcasting, 23 TV radio company remained. Management bodies. Supervisory board, we had 17, now it's 15 persons, one person more will be elected at the conference. That happened because Verkhovna Rada is changing, number of factions is changing. The board, the management board, 7-person, it will be 7-person elected by competition and appointed by supervisory board on contract basis. Leadership at the local level, our branches. We had 24 of them. There were 24 general directors appointed by State Committee of TV and Radio Broadcaster. We don't have any more directors because previously directors were appointed upon submission of heads of regional state administration. Of course, if the state administration appoints a person, this is a dependent person. What we have now? We now have managers and producers, no director generals. Managers and producers are selected at open competitions and hired based on contract basis. Then our staff. In 2017, we have 7,311 staff. Now we have 4,212 staff. These are just the figures, but there are destinies of people behind these figures. You see, the biggest in Europe change in media company, biggest change of staff. More than 3,000 staff members were reduced. They cost us a lot, and for people it was not easy. Financing, it cannot be our achievement. 2017 we had 1,294,000. Then a little bit were added. So what we have now, it's almost a record for all years. 85% only financing. In 2020, 63% of financing. It was never higher than that. Plus to that, we had to pay all our debts, Euronews, and then our budget was reduced as all organization. Commercial activity in 2017, 33 million, 2020, 73.5 million, including lease opportunities, because we have a lot of empty space. Accounting system, it's ridiculous to write it, but accounting work, it's a huge work requiring a lot of time, a lot of staff. And look, in 2017, we were using paper accounting work, using Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, S1, Lotus, what we have now. Actually, when Ernst & Young tried to make a big audit check, we were surprised why they don't publicize their results. They say, we cannot publish the results because it was not, your accounting was not done according to international standards of finance and accounting. We had such primitive system of accounting. Therefore, Ernst & Young could not publish results of their audit. Now, in 2020, our accounting system is working according to international standards of accounting. They all match, and they all are compliant in MSFO. Salary. Salary has been increased 2 times. Well, colleagues do not envy us very much in that, but at least we keep it stable. On the left, in the left corner, difference at the regional level, difference between central and local level is less. This is more important, that amount of salary itself. Well, we started increasing salary level. We are not the best in the market, but at least we are nearing the market level. That's Every company has its debts. We also had debts back in 77. Japanese credit, 31 million. The body of the credit and the interest, and 350 million of euro news. They lasted from 2012. In 2020, we have zero debts. No debt at all. Era Media. This is one of the gestalts that we have completed. Starting from 2001, Era company headlines in 6 hours of broadcasting prime time in the frequencies of the First National channel. Now there is nothing there. We got rid of Era Media. Now they are under the sanctions of the US State Department. Talk show. What we had in 2017, what kind of talk show we had on connection with the government was a talk show that caused a lot of questions. We had Schuster Live. I had questions to this program then, and now I have questions. It was closed. Golden Maze, I will not even mention it. So what talk show we have? Reverse counting, public studio, and other. Journalist investigations in 2017, schemes, Bihus Info, Slidstop. They're wonderful colleagues, they're doing their job well, but all this time we were dreaming to launch our own investigations, and we started it. And you see in the right column what added to the previous three. These are programs of our own production. We cannot say that they are worse or better than Scheme or Bihus, but they are different. They are broader, they are more profound. They are published once in 2 months. But Schema and Bihus, they are broadcast on weekly basis. So it's conveyor work. Our programs are very, very profound investigations, but they are once in 2 months. Radio, FM network, Ukrainian Radio 1, frequency 144, Ukrainian Radio 2, Ukrainian Radio 3, culture. Now they had 15 frequency, now it's 47. So we are very thankful for that, but we are a democratic country. Why we got such a network? We have developed our own network for Promień and Kultura radio stations. This is the highest indicator for all radio programs in Ukraine. Digital. In 2017, we were fighting until the last minute. What we had in 2017, only 4 sites, 130,000 users, 700,000 views per month. Only if there was biathlon competition, we had 700,000, but on the average, it was 250. Now we have 29 sites instead of 4, without standards, without policy, we can hardly do it. Now all that is functioning very well. 4.3 million of unique users, and number of views increased also very much.
And this is core information. These are not all the facts. Back in 2017, we had local elections in local communities. 6 branches, we were calling them directorates. So 6 directorates were able to organize televised debates. And a lot of partners joined. So 30 people showed up at different times to discuss things. So all the 24 branches established a series of shows for debates between candidates. And then 150 candidates, candidate mayors, showed up for the debates. So 18 times different. So it's 18 times more than before. Does it impact the trust? It sure does. And that's evidence telling us that it is not, Suspilne is not governed by the opposition or by the government. Now, speaking about the Academy of the Public Broadcaster, I forgot to mention this previously, but back in 2017, we had nothing like this. So now we have Odessa Hub to discuss civil society initiatives, then the Radio Hub, and we are right now in that hub. And this is where we have a press center, we have a good location for lectures, and also online academy for children, for media literacy, for teenagers. So 42 trainings have been organized for us, and 52 have been organized by us. And on my last slide, wait, I forgot to mention miscellaneous. So 341 tendering procedures, 24 million hryvnia saved as a result of that. So we now have five locations for different shows. More than 10,000 square meters have been repaired, and we did not spend any of the public funds. That was the funds paid by the organization that leased premises from us. 58 trademarks registered, 140 workstations in the branches, 190 computers, 75 notebooks or laptops. Why I'm talking about this? Because last time we had all this 20 years ago. A new diesel powered generator. It's ridiculous, but we never had it before. So, and also 98 partnerships with Ukrainian and international partners and colleagues. And that's the list, the full list of donors. I'm not going to give you numbers because they own the numbers, but it's a lot of money which they spent for the Ukrainian public broadcaster. Not a single penny or cent from that went missing. It's all recorded and accounted for in the previous slides, as you have seen. Thank you very much for your attention. The shortlisted finalists, they are humanitarian oriented people, and I like Word more than Excel spreadsheets as well, so that is very impressive. So challenges, we will have a separate discussion of that. We are now talking about results and achievements, but let's move on. Igor Rosklada is gonna be next, who is from the CDAM Center. And he is joining us online. Can you hear us? Yes, of course. I can. But my computer froze a moment ago. It did not expect you to hear that there is no debt behind this organization. So now let's hear you as an independent expert. So what do you think about the challenges of the public broadcaster which we have today? Hello. Good morning, and I like to start from far away when I present. And our memory as human beings is very short, and it's very short-lived. I remember that I have 10 minutes to present, so I will try to make it in 10. So let's recall where Suspilne, or public broadcaster, came from. So it started in the previous millennium, when Ukrainian parliament made initial attempts to do something with UT1, the predecessor. And this image of UT1 is still a label that they put on the public broadcaster. And we have to do something about this. We have to make sure that it remains in the TV museum where it belongs. But we are talking about 1996. Vitaly Shevchenko, deceased now, he was promoting this bill to partially replace government broadcasting with public broadcasting. Then they, of course, adopted the law, but the public broadcaster has never been established. And it lasted until 2005. Then we had the Orange Revolution, and the then candidate for presidency, he actually offered to establish, and he promised to establish, public broadcaster, but nothing happened. And then after the third attempt in 2015, they were able to launch this incredible process, and I really do not know how they succeeded. Maybe some outside powers impacted all this because there were so many challenges. There was the Russian aggression, the occupation of Crimea, and it impacted the public broadcaster. And those issues were addressed. And it was mind boggling because, again, we thought that everything's going to stop and nothing will develop anymore. But instead, things were growing and developing. Back in the day, before the reform process, the first national TV channel was showing different people, like this communist Simonenko. He had his own show. Russian soap operas were also broadcasted there. There was some kind of content which was diminishing Ukrainian culture instead of showing the real thing. So, and it's very visible, and you can compare what we have now and back then. Ukrainian culture is not about headdress and choirs and dancing. It's about other things. The culture is also different than that. So we want to show this, and if we fail to promote the true Ukrainian culture, the question is, why do we fight the war? Why do we do anything at all? So, are we talking about becoming Malorussia, the little Russia again? So it's not supposed to happen. If we are talking about our identity, then I guess that's the way to do this. We have to show the very important role of the public broadcaster. It's not about rating, right? It's, of course, you have to consider the target audience, you have to get a good market share, but it's about democracy and values. Public broadcaster is the foundation of democracy. If the public has high quality public broadcaster, which, as mentioned today by our dear ambassador, in the times of crisis, people know who to turn to and get the most reliable information. That means that if we have that, that means that this reform is a success. And I must tell you that the reform is still in progress. Back in 2017, we gave birth to this project. Now this project has grown up and became a teenager, and there are some ambitions in place. However, there are so many other things to accomplish, so many things to learn and to change. And I think at the level of the entire company and also down to the level of individual journalists, of course, we make mistakes and legal mistakes take place, and we have to learn as we go. And I'm very grateful to the team of Suspilne because they do pay attention, they do respond, and they want to make their product better. They understand very well how to follow the standard. What else is good and what was a success? We can have a look at this entire system of broadcasting, which used to be government broadcasting, and let's compare that with what we have today. There is huge advancement. We have the digital platform, right? There is this very important indicator saying that the digital content from that platform is shared by people who have nothing to do with media. We are talking about people working someplace else in, railroad construction, then some naturalists groups and so on. They share this information and they like it. That means that they trust this content and they want to share it as much as they can. Then the radio, the Ukrainian radio, is developing. It's interesting to listen to that radio, and in my vehicle, it's always on because I get quick, brief news piece. I don't need all of the news out there, but they just give me very important key highlights. And then there are some good discussions, good talk shows. With TV, I guess that is most complicated because we understand that TV shows are very expensive. And again, considering the level of financing, which is low, unfortunately, in the law they say 0.2%, but 0.2%, that was the status quo, which was documented. It's not some additional money that Suspilne is asking for. We're talking about money which have been earmarked and allocated for public broadcasting before 2015. And then at some point, they decided to affirm this number. So 2014 was the beginning of the war with Russia. And the international European experts, they said we're supposed to have 0.39%, but we did not have any moral right to increase this number even by one penny because the enemy was at the gate, and it is at the gate right now, and we did not have good army in place at the time. Hence, we had this number, zero point 0.2. And over the years, Suspilne never ever was able to secure funding in full, unlike its predecessors. And in spite of that, we do show change, and we show change of quality. Now, what's important? When I contact to rank and file journalists, I see that they have motivation to work in Suspilne, because that is the place where you are not going to have some sky high wages, but you will be working there as a journalist, following the standards instead of listening to somebody. What exactly are you supposed to cover and who to film? So those Suspilne journalists, even if they want to leave, for them it becomes a moral dilemma, because here they know that they are the journalists and they follow the standards, and the standards are in place. For them, changing jobs is going to be a challenge, whether this new place will allow them to remain good, unbiased journalists, who they are right now. So for me, that means success, because we are now trying to shape up Ukrainian journalism, and that is a lengthy process, and we cannot even promise that it will be over in 2 years. This process is ongoing. We have to retain it. So, thinking about our future steps and future directions, I want the new head of management board to continue with supporting independence, because it's a newly established tradition and we want those journalists to remain independent. Secondly, in cooperation with the parliamentary committee, we amended the law. We lifted the moratorium for disposal of property, and we want Suspilne to dispose of the resources that they have, because you cannot just operate with your hands tied behind your back and create something extraordinary, keeping in mind that they're not letting you move in the direction you want to move. The changes are due, but you have to be very careful with those changes, because Suspilne has got to remain an independent organization, right? Now, we are talking about the management and we are talking about the supervisory council. That will help with independence. And speaking about ratings, they will increase. It's not gonna be too high. You will not be able to compete with commercial broadcasters, but for Suspilne, for public broadcaster, it's important to have good visibility, to have good recognition and trust. And if you retain all that, I think that this reform will be a success. Thank you, Igor. Thank you so much. This was Igor Roskladai, Deputy Director for SEDEM Center. So, because you are a lawyer, I think you like history, and this love to history was a cross-cutting theme in your presentation. Thank you so much for taking us along that memory lane, because those changes you can understand only in the context. And when you see this historic background, the framework, then those indicators which Zorab mentioned before, because for some they might not look significant, but if you look at the past and see what's happening now, that would make a lot of sense. Thank you so much. Everybody is very careful about challenges in their presentations, but I am convinced that in the next panel we will talk a lot about challenges, because some candidates actually develop their platforms, their programs based on the information about challenges. So from Zoom, we are coming back to the Radio Hub studio. And we have been talking about the regulator, the National TV and Radio Council. And we have Tatiana Rudenko, who is a member of the National Council on Television and Radio Broadcasting. So, what's your take on the successes and challenges? On behalf of the National Council, I would like to thank all the partners who, for more than 5 years, have been supporting steadily the development of Suspilne in Ukraine. This process was very complicated, and this is now history. And they know how much it took to make this change happen, to make this transformation happen. So I would like to thank the managers. I'd like to thank Oksana here for this huge and incredible work that you have accomplished, for things that they have done to develop this very complicated, sophisticated structure, because not everybody in our country was able to do this. So everybody who came here today, they were not just following the process, they were helping as much as they could in the process. And today's expectations, most and foremost, they are connected to the fact that Suspilne, the public broadcaster, has to actually become a good competitor to the commercial broadcasters. And then those broadcasters will look up to this organization for standards, for impartiality, for equal treatment of all the parties, and those things will become a solid rule. And then groups of people will not feel forgotten and abandoned in the society. They will have a good advocate, a good information partner represented by the broadcasters. So the National Council is supporting steadily the development of the broadcaster, and we help as much as we can to develop it even further, and we do all possible so that the shows of this broadcaster could be heard and watched all over Ukraine. And we're talking about expanding the radio network. We are talking about uh, addressing the licensing issues and getting the license renewed for the broadcaster. Then there is one mechanism which I want to mention, and it's mentioned in the law as well. So it's called the election of the independent council, and that's exactly what we are responsible for. We know very well how these agencies are formed. This procedure is quite complicated, and it's very well prescribed, and the process is lengthy. And with the candidates from the parliament, it's a bit easier, but practical experience shows you have to be very careful. You have to watch closely to make sure that there are no violations of the law in the process. And we were trying to use this gap between the two lockdowns to elect the necessary supervisory bodies. Of course, we still miss one member, but that agency, that organization is effective and they are now operating in full. We are very happy that the supervisory body will be able to collect the institutional memory and accumulate this memory, because there are some members who have been re-elected and received powers for the new term of office. And this actually helps with implementing the change, with introducing new things and continuing with old approaches, old initiatives. So this independence hopefully will continue, the independence which was supported by the previous members.
Яким керуватиметься новообрані члени наглядової ради, адже незалежність
We
є
hope that the new elected board will continue this principle, although few years of productive work is in the experience of public broadcaster. It has its achievements. We see them all, but now they are on the eve of the new step. For the first time, re-election is happening openly, and we are re-electing the new team that will work for the next 4 years. This is a competition not only of candidates, but their views, their visions. The task of supervisory board is to select the best of them. as well as our task. We wish all members elected good wisdom and good development. We are ready to cooperate with the new head of the management board to continue old traditions. We believe that no matter who will come to this important position, public broadcasting will remain public. Thank you, Tetiana Rudenka, a member of National Council of Ukrainian Television and Radio Broadcasting. Now, from state authorities presentation, we switch to civil society representative. Civil society is the co-organizer of today's debate. I give the floor to Denis Denisenko, who is executive director of the Coalition of Reanimation Package of Reforms. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Much has been told about achievements already, so most probably I shall continue. Our coalition is engaged in promoting public broadcasting. Even at the beginning of this year, we conducted a number of discussions with Detector Media and other organizations, elaborating recommendations for the new legislation. 8576 draft law amendments to legislation, they will allow public broadcaster to work more effectively. However, I must say how important today's competition is. It's not only legislation, but it's rather the people that come to the team of public broadcast and promote it further must be maximum effective. And that is not possible without independent, transparent competition that could be publicized, that could be seen by all experts, by all people, to hear the vision of candidates, how they see development of public broadcasting. This is very important. I don't have much time, so I shall speak briefly, not much about achievement. But we must change not only people, we must also change legislation, and we must move forward the amendments to legislation, both regarding content and give possibility for public broadcaster to take use of its property to be more independent, both from parliament and from authorities, to get stable and foreseeable financing, because to compete with commercial channels is not an easy task. Public broadcasting must be real independent. It should become a standard of truth in the period of post-truth. These are the main things that I wanted to say, and to thank public broadcaster once again for the permanent support in transparent, open coverage of reforms of Ukraine without any shades of the color, but very open. Thank you very much. Thank you, Denise. When talking about achievements, we could see that a radical change has happened from the state-run company to different model of governance, optimization of work, kind of freedom that allows to create new products. As regards the challenges, we see that most of our participants were mentioning one should look at the ratings and make a decision. Some people say ratings is the foremost important thing. Others say no, it's not the rating, but rather trust. So, but all people say that the main challenge is maintaining independence, search for optimal model of funding. There are several proposals now. We should judge them all and make a decision. And probably all that will be reflected in the new legislation, which is also a challenge. Another challenge is that supervisory board was renewed. There is institutional member, and this is good. The board management board will be renewed. We must steer this big boat the right way. Just look at the staff member. This is really a huge boat. Very difficult to manage, very difficult to steer as any kind of big vehicle, and it should keep the right course. This is one of the main challenges. We have one more expert and participant of this channel. They will join us by Zoom from UK. But before that, before I introduce her and say why her participation is so important, we shall switch to other video made in cooperation with BBC Action Media, addresses of ambassadors to people, to users, to media experts, why media is so important for democratic values. So I would ask our technicians to show us statements of Matthias, EU ambassador in Ukraine. So I want to mention that all debates are organized by the Project Council of Europe, financed by EU and Council of Europe. So please show it on the screen.
Public broadcasters play a crucial role in European media landscape. They provide reliable information, enrich education and culture, and produce entertainment. They ensure pluralistic and healthy communication in society. In my native Estonia, I have a very personal connection with the public service broadcaster. My both parents worked there for many years, experiencing also the transformation from censorship of state media into the independent public media. I recall my university years and the instrumental role our broadcaster played in the independence movement, or afterwards when it transmitted live the opening ceremony of Olympic Games, where Estonian athletes represented again their own country. I also remember the debates ahead of Estonia joining the European Union on different benefits and reservations about the membership. I was not working in Kiev yet when Suspilne was established more than 4 years ago. Considering the size and legacy of its predecessor, it was a groundbreaking reform indeed. Today, Suspilne is a broadcaster with many challenges, some of which are not much different what the broadcasters in the EU countries have experienced or face now. However, it is also a fact that it enjoys editorial independence that Ukraine can be proud of. Suspilne's journalists have managed to win a leading position in quality independent journalism in Ukraine. Again, from my own personal experience and due to the professionalism of Suspilne's journalists, I have always enjoyed giving interviews to Suspilne, even if sometimes the questions are quite tough. I am also pleased that there are success stories on which further development of the public broadcaster can be built. Just take the weekly political talk show Zvorotny Vydlik, or Countdown. In its first year, the program recorded over 26 million views, reaching over impressive 40 million views a year later. My final point, Suspilne can count on EU's political and financial support. Bearing in mind how much both passion and effort have been invested into establishing the independent public broadcaster, it is definitely one of the treasures of Ukraine that we should foster. I genuinely believe that having the strong national public service broadcaster contributes to Ukraine moving closer to the EU in the broadest sense of the word.
Ну і дуже приємно, що Суспільне стало
I
міжнародним
was very pleased to hear that Suspilne is now international brand, even in English it is said Suspilne.
такі проміжні роботи Суспільного на цей період.
So we have discussed achievements of broadcast and challenges for the future with Zura Volosanya, Ira Skladai, Tetiana Rudenko, and Denis Denisenko. So it's time to come to debates. However, we would like to invite the presentation that I would call it information from referee. I would like to invite Sally Broughton-Mitsova, Council of Europe expert. She will join us via Zoom from UK. Sally will tell us about Council of Europe standards on procedures of appointment of governing bodies of public broadcasters. Today, many times mentioned that abiding by European standards is one of the most important things in forming any management board, in organizing work and functioning of public broadcaster. Sally, the floor is yours.
Hello. I have a short presentation, so I hope you can see some of the slides. Firstly, I want to express my great pleasure in seeing the progress that I have just heard about in the last hour, because I was involved in the drafting of the statutes for Suspilne back in 2016, at the very beginnings of the process that you have just been talking about that has been happening in the last several years. So I was very pleased to hear the reports about how well the local elections were covered, about the professionalism of the journalists that has been experienced by the different people who spoke, and to hear about the changes in relation to the financial situation and particularly in relation to staffing, and how you have reorganized around the principles of open competition. And that is something that will come up again in my presentation today. So if we can go to the next slide. Thank you. What I want to draw out here are three fundamental principles, because the Council of Europe is a collection of states that have agreed on standards and principles at a very high level. So there aren't really details in any of the Council of Europe agreements about how processes should be run, but there are certainly key principles that we can take to and translate into how these things should be done. And firstly, I'm going to mention independence, which is something that you have been hearing about quite a lot already. And that is independence from both political and business interests. Then I want to talk about accountability. And in terms of accountability, just the very fact that we're having this event, that this is all being done in a public manner, the selection of the head of the management board, that is an excellent initial step for accountability. And the other is, of course, serving the public interest. This is a public service role in a public service institution. So I'm going to talk just a bit about what Council of Europe standards have said in relation to that. So if we can go to the next slide. So in the Council of Europe's declaration about the governance of public service media, we have agreement that independence from the state has to be balanced with accountability to a wide range of stakeholders and high levels of professional integrity. So we're not just talking about being the person who's taking this position, and the entire process of the selection needs to be not influenced by political interests or by state institutions. And then there also needs to be accountability to stakeholders, and stakeholders are viewers. Stakeholders are the different civil society groups that represent those viewers, but stakeholders are also the employees of Suspilne. They are also the other members of management bodies, and also those with whom you compete in the market. And high levels of professional integrity. Right? And that is something that is not just about the person who accepts this role, but these are things that Council of Europe declaration here foresees being part of the whole culture of the institution. And an institution like this gets its culture from the top, right? From those in the management board, those who are in the various high-level positions, from Surab, from others. You have this, there has to be a culture of professional integrity and a culture of accountability and independence. So the first step is this process that we're going to be hearing very publicly from all of those who are interested in doing this position. And then the future when they start working. And here I would like to just say it was great to hear from people who commented about the quality of the candidates for this position. And I think it's excellent that people who are of high quality are interested in taking on what is, of course, always a challenging role. So we can go to the next slide. So here we can see in what is, I guess, probably the most called upon element of Council of Europe policy when it comes to public service broadcasting is very, well, at least in our circles, the famous recommendation number R96. Right? This was a crucial document that established standards on guaranteeing independence. So each of these candidates should have this in mind, right? That we must directly exercise functions in the public interest, may not receive payments or hold enterprises in any other organizations in the media. And this is probably the more subtle one, may not receive mandate or take instructions from any body that is outside of Suspilne, except in special cases provided by law. So there might be a national security situation. But this is saying that essentially everyone who's being a candidate today, anyone who comes into this position, their first loyalty is to Suspilne and to the public. And now sometimes that can be a bit difficult in order to try to find the balance. How do you listen to the public without taking mandate or taking instruction from some other body? And the key to doing that is something that I would like for everyone to have in mind, and that is proactive accountability. And it comes through in the culture that is established now within Suspilne by the management bodies, by those at the top, and carried throughout. So in order to demonstrate that the person holding this position is not receiving mandate or taking instruction from outside and is exercising their function in the public interest. It's important to have an accountability relationship with the public. That means not just to Parliament, not just to the relevant ministry and the regulator, but to the public. And that means making things public, making annual reports public, making decisions public. That gives the opportunity for public to feedback and continually turning to the public to ask them, what is it that they want? What is the basis of this trust? What is going well that should be continued? What is it that they want to see differently? Because that kind of accountability is not taking instructions from another body. It's about being accountable to and listening to your public. I'll go to the next slide, because just to close, I want to talk about the public interest. And, you know, from the very early days of the public service broadcaster, the BBC, where I am now in the UK, is probably one of the most famous in the world, and one of the first to do it. And we have an idea that the public service broadcaster is always in a country to inform, and to educate, to play a role in culture, and also to entertain. And that means that there needs to be diversity. And this is affirmed also in the Council of Europe standards. Something else that we have that has been agreed upon by Ukraine and other countries in the Council of Europe is that the public service, the public interest, needs to be for the entire public. And that means representing diversity of voices and including diversity of voices and representing a diversity that is in the public. And that means not just in front of the screen, right? But also behind the scenes. One of the best ways. And so when you're thinking about who's on board, who is actually creating the program, that needs to represent the same kind of diversity that you want to see outside. And there are specific guidelines on media for minorities and how to serve minority languages and to protect minority communities that need to be incorporated into your visions of the public interest for Suspilne. Now, there's always a challenge in terms of for public service broadcasters that are not financially independent in terms of being a really challenging voice. And so that's why I'm quite pleased to hear that there are amendments on the table, that the financial stability of Suspilne is certainly a hot topic, I guess you could say, and is something that is being done about. Because it's very important that this idea of serving the public interest includes being a proxy for the public in asking challenging questions, right? Asking those things, and it was great to hear from ambassadors that this is happening when they appear in the studio, and it also needs to happen every time you're dealing with the government. Challenging and questioning on behalf of the public. They don't have the access, and so the kind of journalism needs to not just be, it isn't just about being balanced, it's also about being appropriately challenging. And Council of Europe recommendations very clearly state that public service broadcasters need to be given the freedom to keep pace with technology, to even set standards in terms of new technology, right? To not be constrained by traditional media formats and everything, but to really be adventurous, and that means sometimes taking risks. So it would be great to hear in presentations today some visions for how to really tap into what new technology, new services, and new formats can offer, so that Suspilne can really push the envelope, as we say, in that direction, because that is part of serving the public interest. And finally, it is important that we remain accessible to all, to have in mind that there may be a digital divide, that there may be skills divisions, and that the Suspilne really does need to still reach the entire public in various ways. So I hope that sort of sets the standards. I'm looking forward to the presentations. And I thank you and wish luck to all of the candidates.
Okay, thanks so much. З нами була Салі Брауден-Міцова,
So
консультантка.
this was Sally Mitsova, who is a consultant from the Council of Europe. And Sally spoke about the Council of Europe standards for different functions of the public broadcaster and management function and so on. And she also reminded us about the key principles and fundamentals for public broadcasters, which we cannot lose track of. And in the programs, in the presentations of our candidates, those things have to be discussed as well, and they need to be implemented. The winning program should remember all this, should take this into consideration, and these ideas should be implemented. So we will also talk to Sally at the end of the debate, and she will make a few comments. And she will make a reflection from the standpoint of the Council of Europe standards. Right now, we are about to begin the central panel, the debates, where we will be listening to the presentations of candidates. These candidates will be answering questions. And we have 4 candidates. We had 16 applications. 17 candidates who took part in pre-selection process when we were applying standards to evaluate the applications, and then 4 candidates were shortlisted. And we will be hearing them in the alphabetical order. Some of them have joined us in Zoom. One candidate will be with us in the radio hub, in the studio. So Vitaly Dokolenko is with us right now, and I just want to make sure that he can hear us and see us. No, we do not hear anything from you, Vitaly.
Віталію, чи чуєте нас?
Can you hear us, Vitaly? Please confirm.
Зараз Віталій, мабуть, під'єднується.
I think Vitaly is now in the process of connecting. Then we have Oksana Tsibula. Oksana, can you see us? Can you hear us? Yes, I can see you, and I can hear you very well.
Віталію, можете...
Так.
Vitaly,
Так, так.
are you online? Yes, I am. Yes, it's all good.
З нами пан Микола Чернотицький.
And we have Mykola Chernotetsky with us, who can see us and hear us, as far as I can understand, and Andriy Shapovalov. Hello, dear colleagues. I can see you and hear you very well. So all of our candidates are with us. Allow me to brief you about the rules of procedure. You have not been informed about questions. You have general understanding of what is going to happen. And that is the beauty of today's debates. Every candidate will have 5 minutes for presenting some key items in your programs. We recommend you to focus on 10 key items. Maybe that's not the best option, but we would like to engage you into the so-called decalogue. So after the presentation of your programs, I, as a moderator, will be asking questions. The questions which we have prepared based on the analysis of your respective programs. And when the journalists also analyze your programs, Ukrainian journalists, we worked on those questions. So each and everyone will be able to ask one question to the speaker. Of course, we will follow the timing. and you will have about 2 minutes to answer the question. I will keep the timing, and I reserve the right to stop you, to intervene, because we have to follow the schedule. At the end, I will have one general question for all of the participants, and you will have 2 minutes to answer this question. Before that, before we switch to your presentations, I suggest to run a quick energizer so that you could relax a little bit and we will learn more about you as individuals. So we will have a blitz, a round of 3 questions, and we will ask those questions again in the alphabetical order. So you will have up to 30 seconds to answer the question. So question 1, when you want to energize, what kind of music you listen to? Vitaly, please, 30 seconds for you.
Це важке питання, тому
It's a very complicated question because I listen to different kinds of music and I listen a lot,
класики і заканчуючи
ranging from the
сучасною
classics
музика,
and
тому тут немає
including modern day Ukrainian music. So when you need to energize yourself very quickly, you know the name of the singer or composer?
глюк.
Gluck, that's the
Група
composer.
Мегаполіс,
Cosmopolis
вокалістом
band.
є моя жінка.
My wife, my spouse, is a member of that band. Oksana, what kind of music do you listen to when you want to energize? Linkin Park, Numb. Very well, thank you so much. Good taste. And thank you for very quick answer. Mykola, what about you? I like to jog and I listen to Metallica and AC/DC. Thank you. That's nice. Andriy Shapoval. And what about you? What kind of music do you listen to energize?
Мабуть, не буду оригінальним. Мені
I
дуже подобається
think
Кузьма Скрябін.
Kuzma Skrябin.
В його творчості
I really like his work, and it's so diverse that it inspires me so much. Very well, thank you so much. Let's ask the second question, and then we will follow this order in reverse. Andriy, it will be most complicated for you because this is the question that nobody has heard. So, which character in the literature is a role model for you? Very quickly, please. 30 seconds. And the time is up.
Мені важко сказати,
Hard to say
така велика кількість різних
because there are so many that are so different. I am building my life based on many different characters. Tom Sawyer, when I was a child, was my role model, and generally Mark Twain and his works played a very important role. But of course, my model has changed since then. Right, but you yourself is the best character, especially when you feature in your own novel. Thank you so much, Mykola. I think it's Winston Churchill. Right. Oksana, my favorite character is Mephisto from the Faustus. Right, that's very, very deep. Thank you so much, Vitaly. Well, it's D'Artagnan from the Three Musketeers. Well, I'd probably ask now to bring in Burgundy wine into the studio. Let's Now I have another round of questions. Let's talk about energizing ourselves. Let's talk about inspiration. So when you require inspiration, when you need some strength, what kind of mantra, what kind of motto you run in your head?
Ну, немає в мене мантр таких
Well, mantra, I don't have that, really. I'm not using that. No,
кожного дня.
it's nothing that I would use every day. My most important mantra is that everything is possible
Зробити будь-яку
and I can do anything.
роботу, вирішити будь-яку
I can solve any problem.
все.
That's it. Thank you so much. Oksana, what's your motto or mantra? No matter what happens, remember, you can try again. Thank you so much, Mikola. I really liked this slogan by Barack Obama, which runs like this: Yes, I can, or yes, you can. Well, do whatever it takes, and whatever, be whatever will be. All right, okay, thank you so much. We now had a quick introduction into your personality, and of course, our personalities are very deep, and we ourselves will not be able to get down to the bottoms of our personalities, no matter how much we try. So let's talk about more serious things, things that brought us here today. So let's talk about your programs, your presentations. And I will remind you that you have 5 minutes to make your presentations. And we will start with Vitaly Dokulenko, who is a journalist and also a producer. And he has been working in many prominent TV channels. He also launched a series of entertainment shows and other kinds of shows. Now, the title of your program is The Big Transformation. So you have 5 minutes, Vitaly. Please.
Добрий день усім. Так, почнемо з презентації.
Everyone,
Велика трансформація
good afternoon.
перший
So, the
етап,
big transformation.
запускаємо повноцінний
Stage
інформаційний
one, launching a fully fledged information channel with blocks of news. We will add international news, cultural news, sports news, then 30-minute blocks for local news. So we want to approach the people, we want to approach the public, we want to go local. And the original companies will create their own information blocks and they will have 30 minutes to present them. So we have a good schedule. We also want to use a uniform approach for design of the studios. Also, we want to raise the status of regional journalism. We want to make sure that it's prestigious and the journalists should be proud of working in Suspilne. We want to make sure that the local news are interesting, and we want to make sure that the journalists at the local level can help. Right. So if you want to show us the slides, you have to really switch between the slides. You have to. Well, unfortunately, I cannot switch the slides. I'd appreciate if somebody could switch them for me.
Будь ласка, третій слайд вже.
Third slide, please.
Ми говоримо не тільки про те, що погано.
We are talking not about the things that are bad. We compensate them with positive news. Things are not so bad in our country. Our country is developing. Our country is going to happy future. We are operational. We are always first. We don't forget that war is going on in Ukraine. We get engaged in educational programs and we entertain. Why is it possible? A new department of Suspilne, we have 225 staff. This is more than some commercial channels. We have our news services in each regional company. So access is much faster, and we can do it faster than competitors. I can give you example. A news channel in public broadcast in Poland, TVP, that is built based on regional blocks from 17 to 20, 21:45 to 22:15 on a daily basis. France, Denmark, and other countries build informational channels based on same blocks. So, next slide. Why is it necessary? Informational security. We all have seen how commercial informational channels can change into propaganda channels. Promptness. News are given a fixed time because they can get outdated very soon. The basis for regional broadcasting, even regional broadcasting, must ensure 24 hours broadcasting. So finally, the main hub is created. UA24 transitional stage. At the same time, we launched the process of getting license for a separate news channel, UA24, on satellite and network T2 for cable operator and in the internet. By the end of the first year, the country will get a separate news channel, UA24. And it will change gradually from 1 to 1.5 share, with further growth to 3%. This audience 18 plus for entire Ukraine. And transitional stage news network with half an hour step blocks of the news and gradual introduction of new program. Slide 7, reformatting. Launch of informational channel gives us time for reformatting and step-by-step launch of main blocks on the main channel. Ideally, by the end of year 1, all that will be in our network. Morning show, daily talk show for women's audience on workday with possible digest on weekday. By the end of year 2, we shall achieve the share 2.5, even 3 of the main share. In the second year, we launch documentary programs, reality, history, culture, music, culinary programs. We form and create our own stars. Or, if possible, we shall involve the spin-off stars with image is not spoiled. So 20 seconds left. Okay. So what should we do by the end of year 4? 2 main channels work with the share 5 to 7 traditional viewing, UA24 news, culture for teenagers and children audience 4 to 25. Culture should become fashionable and prestigious. So your time has finished. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we switch to questions. First question comes from me on the basis of expert and journalist analysis of your program. And you will have 2 questions to answer, 2 minutes to answer. You suggest to create a new news channel, UA24. My question is, in what way it will be different from other news channels? Why the viewer must come to your channel? What main advantage you will communicate in such competitive environment? And whether there will be some kind of illusion with Ukraine 24 channel. News channel of Suspilne is needed to the country because our channel will not be biased, will not be engaged. All news channels in Ukraine, they belong to someone. Ukraine 24, they belong to particular persons or forces. Our news channel with well-balanced news, not working for particular person, particular group interest is needed. In developed European countries, there are no commercial informational broadcast. Like in Denmark, it's only public broadcaster who is giving news. Therefore, in a country, in a warring country, there is informational protection, protection of this information space. We shall form a different type of news, not the way other channels do it, based on informational agencies. There is a good example how informational channel BFM24 in France was launched, that from the very beginning formed different type of news line, and it became very popular quite quickly, even could compete with the great and costly public broadcaster. That's somehow like that. Thank you very much for your answer and for the time. Now, questions from your competitors. Oksana, your question, please. And other colleagues, please prepare your questions. Oksana, your question. I have a specifying questions. You mentioned that news are broadcast in fixed time, so they should not lose promptness. So your position is chaotic presentation of news. In the modern world, when news come to the viewer or reader in minutes after they happened, and when we live up to 9 p.m. news, everybody already knows this news. Therefore, there is a need to provide this information promptly, to give it quickly, to interfere in other program and give the news. And if we have this information channel, it can react very quickly. Thank you, Mykola. Your question to Vitaly. Good afternoon, Vitaly. My question is rather pertaining to your CV published on the website. You didn't mention your work in Radio Vesti and Zik channel. Is there any reason for that? As regards Zik channel, I have been working there rather as a consultant. As regards to the owner of the channel, to the other owner, not that it has now, I suggested him not to move to Kiev, but rather make regional channel. In that case, it could be more interesting and could create a very original media with a level of authority as Postup in Lviv used to have, and everybody read it, but they didn't listen to my advice and our cooperation ended. I have not been working in Radio Visti and left this radio station at the moment when pressure on the staff started. I resigned, and after that 98% of staff left, and we created after that NV Radio, a new radio channel. I don't think it's a big landmark stage in my CV. I didn't actually work in Radio Vesti. Thank you for exhaustive answer. Andriy Shapovalov, your question, please.
Вітаю, пане Віталію.
Vitaly, hello.
До вас таке запитання.
My question
Ідея зі
is,
створенням інформаційного
the idea of
каналу
creation of informational channel is interesting,
чинний закон
but whether the existing law allows it and whether you have budget to implement it. So what will you do? I mentioned that in the presentation already what our plans are. News service in Suspilne has a staff that is equal to the staff number of commercial news channel. If we add number of journalists in the regional branches, then it will be the biggest, the most developed informational structure by number. But for some reason, it's not working. As regards remuneration, it is resolved. Getting license for satellite broadcasting has never been a big problem. Therefore, I think National Council on TV Radio Broadcasting, with whom we have already successful cooperation on getting license for the radio. There will be no problem with that with the National Council. And then we shall work to get in the digital blocks and work with the cable operators. You know yourself how difficult it is, but it could be done. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for clear, brief answers. Your job was most difficult because you were the first. Now we switch to the next candidate. Oksana, you have 5 minutes to present main positions of your program. Please. I welcome you all. I immediately start item by item. I think we must force attention for broadcasting at near border territories in conditions of war. When Russia is bringing and concentrating troops to the boundary, it is important to broadcast to the 1,000 settlement near this separation line. I'm used to work with the budget issues, so I know how to save money when paying utilities, etc., and how to pay land tax, how to organize it better. I can manage the annual budget. Then to make a decision which platform we shall give the advantage. We have digital first, but legislatively, TV radio company. So biggest part of money should be spent for development of this platform because you cannot become the first everywhere immediately. Then you could watch your viewer, which audience we need. And we should engage advertisers' interest for the audience. We must work on the content in parallel with it to become developer of content number 1. And first for the main platform and then spread it to other platforms. Then use it for different formats. To resolve the issue with selling our TV radio products. We wanted to transfer rights, but we couldn't do it. On the basis of production branch, to make a studio that will develop different content, to organize staff and financial decentralization, 60 to 40, center and region, to switch to the new model of funding. That's it. Thank you. You fit into half of your time. Therefore, remaining 2.5 minutes could be preserved. If you need more time to answer questions of your contenders. Oksana Tsibula presented her program. She's a journalist by experience. She was a journalist and editor in different media in Dnipro. She was a producer of Dnipro branch of public broadcaster. She was a manager of media center. So most of her professional time she devoted to city of Dnipro and Dnipropetrovsk region. Oksana, I have a question to you. You mentioned your main position, your main focus, learning your audience. In your written program, you mention how you see content policy. Things are easy. You say just things are very easy. First, we define the needy target audience. This is the audience which has paying ability and present the product that they will need and ready to pay. But I think things are not so easy. How Suspilne will focus only on this type of audience that can pay, although its mission is to cover all groups of society. And what this audience like, other audience may dislike it. You define one of the needs, how to get relaxed from life problems, entertainment, whether Suspilne's main function is to relax from problems and entertainment. So first, I didn't say that only this audience will be the focus. This is the related audience one should engage a new one. And it's not me who is saying, it's the result of the study made by the Swedish company opinion poll ordered by Suspilne. It's not contrary to the other ideas. We have very powerful news blog. It is just development of additional format. You should expand your range. So that is one example. Now, questions from your opponents or maybe future colleagues. Vitaly, your question to Oksana. I have no questions to Oksana. No question. Good. Mikola. Oksana, you program, you write. Public broadcaster must get away from expanding programs, but rather developing content of different genre and format. Does it mean that you should get reviews from development of digital platform, develop other platforms? Thank you. My answer is, it doesn't mean that you refuse from digital platform, but you must decide which platform is priority and start developing content. That's all that I want to say. Thank you. Andrei Shapovalov, your question. I welcome Oksana. I read your program. You are a high-level profi. I would like to see you in my team. So which function, which position you are ready to take if I win and you will be my staff? So headhunting has started. Wonderful.
Ваша
Пане Микола,
відповідь
так,
означає, що
для різних платформ, виробництво контенту для різних.
Production
So
of
we are talking
content
about
for different platforms.
production of content for different
Mikola,
platforms. So we have
my
to
idea is there must
set
be
a
one
priority
platform which
for
is
one
priority,
platform, but
but
we
you should
have to
develop content
produce
for all
content for
platforms.
all the platforms. That's
Thank
the whole
you.
idea. Thank you so much. See, we're ahead of schedule. That's unbelievable. I did not even expect that the answers will be to the point, like this, and very compact. That's how I would call it. But anyways, let's move on. And next is Mykola Chornotetsky, who is already a member of the board in Suspilne. He is responsible for regional development. He has been working a lot in Sumy Oblast, and he was the local broadcaster director. He was also the director of the local branch of Suspilne in Sumy. He was a councilman in Sumy. So, Mikola, you have 5 minutes to make a quick presentation about your program. I wanted to tell you a quick story which we had in one of the branches in the very beginning. It's a story about one little button. And in fact, it's about one system. So we had one person who was responsible for pressing the button. Now, what that means, what the sense is about, when somebody would call into the show and ask some awkward question, then you press the button and that person gets disconnected. That's how the system used to work for 5, maybe 6 years before. And now Suspilne is an independent organization, and right now it's the only company that unites all the platforms, that creates political programs, honest, unbiased news. In the first 4 years, the key objective of the board was to bring 26 companies together into one, get rid of the toxic content, and also to optimize and streamline personnel, and also prove that this institution is independent. In 4 years, no one at any level had an opportunity to claim that this organization was playing along with someone political or business interest. Of course, this independence come at a cost of funding and support. Of course, we made mistakes. As any new institution, we were destined to make mistakes. But of course, we are one of the only institutions which is still has a reform in progress. And our task is to have independent investigations, provide unbiased news, and show processes that happen globally and in country through debates, TV shows. We want to show some sporting events. We want to also develop content for children and educational programs. Speaking about future plans, I want to focus on the consumption methods. And nationally and globally, we're not just replacing one big screen into small screens. We're talking about changing the way of thinking. The traditional media, as we can see, who now focuses on older audiences, is getting less and less. And the digital platforms, they now influence people, their decisions, and so on. The public broadcaster, through its radio and TV platforms, covering age groups older than 45. And in the next 4 years, Suspilne has to focus on other audiences who are now moving away from a linear consumption process. So digital first is going to be the key principle. We are talking about the OTT platform, and that's another opportunity to engage audiences who are not covered by traditional media. We are talking about those audiences that like detective shows, who police shows, some shows that tell the world about Ukraine, and we want to make sure that parents do not fear showing these programs to their children. The key task for us is to expand the audiences and to make it into top 10, UA Pershi, Suspilne Media site, and so on. The public broadcaster would like to also add more content for national minorities, also by expanding the local branches. It's very important to use UA Crimea channel, because we want to show everything that's happening in the peninsula. We want to address to the Crimean Tatars and to help them recover from the bad image that they inherited from the Soviet Union. So we want to also make more and more own content. So we have these many objectives. So the operational block will have to translate into the service-oriented service, which will help to expand, which will also help develop corporate culture, and our employees will be able to develop inside the company. I started working in the branch in this company, and I ended up in the management board, and I have introduced a lot of different reforms. I have a BA from one of the most reputable schools, and I have a very good team who is ready to work day and night, and I am convinced that we will be able to develop public broadcasting in Ukraine. Thank you so much. And you made it in 5 minutes, so it's a record-breaking championship, something like this. Thank you, Mykola. I have a question for you. My colleagues and I have analyzed your program, and my question is not really about the program, but about the past. You mentioned yourself that there were mistakes in the past, and you are a member of the current management board. So can you please mention what was your biggest mistake of the time, or some kind of a mission, and what kind of lessons you learned after this? Or maybe you have suggestions how to address this mistake. So there was one miscalculation that I made. It's about this the early management structure. The company was not ready for that back then. We were trying to launch management systems that operate in so-called green companies. Now, this company has a red level of management where there is a clear chain of command, and we wanted to apply something different that would usually work in Google. That was not really working in the national in this public broadcaster. That actually slowed down the development process of the company, and it brought consequences. Can you give us specific examples of innovations that did not work? Well, the general producer council, where all the producers would get together and discuss ideas and become free from the admin pressure and discuss different things for implementation. Instead, they started arguing, and they were not talking about the future, they were only talking about the present. And a lot of platforms were not properly controlled, there was no oversight, and that impacted the whole company badly. Thank you so much. Let's now talk about Q&A from your colleagues. Vitaly, your question, please. I don't have any questions. Thank you so much. No questions. Very well. Oksana Tsibula, your question. I would like to clarify something. Mykola, you said that you're going to establish the OTT platform. Do you already have some kind of content that you would like to put into this platform? There are two processes that run in parallel, and my plans for 2023 include establishment of the OTT platform. Prior to that, we just had this artistic competition for the content, for producing content for children. So we will use that, and in 2 years, and I hope that there will be full funding available for the broadcasters so that we could invest in some large scale production so that we could get good content to post on the OTT platform. Thank you. Thank you. Andriy, your question now, please. Greetings. I do not have any questions about the program. I wanted to ask Zurab Alasanya, because he is the founding father of Suspilne. I have a simple question for Mykola. I know you for a very long time, and I know about your capabilities. What kind of position would you like to get in my team? What kind of function? Thank you so much for your proposal. Thank you. I think our system of values are different, and if I lose this competition, I'm gonna send my CV to a private sector organization, maybe even not in media business. Thank you so much. Thank you for questions. Thank you for answers. Now let's transition to the next presenter, Andriy Shapoval, who was, by the way, just asking questions. Andriy, professionally, is a journalist. And also he graduated from the public administration course, and he was the head of the public broadcaster branch UA Donbass and Lugansk branch. And also he was working in one of the central TV channels. So he has been working a lot to develop media in Donbass. Andriy, you have 5 minutes to talk about some key items in your program. Dear colleagues, greetings. And I see that we have saved some time. Allow me to begin by commemorating Volodymyr Yavorivsky, who He's a member of the council from the first convocation. We know him very well. I think we have to commemorate this very prominent Ukrainian writer and also one of the founding fathers of the public broadcaster in Ukraine. So now, allow me to greet everybody who's watching us. I'd like to thank the Council of Europe office for helping us organize it. Because of the open debate, we can also claim that the process of elections is very transparent. And because of the Council of Europe and Andriy, who is the moderator, we will be able to see who is a good candidate. Before I start presenting, before I start talking about the challenges and achievements of Suspilne, I'd like to also thank for serious contribution into the process of development of Suspilne, the previous and the current management boards, because of the very diligent, and I think we can call it a volunteer work. We now can discuss further development of the broadcaster as an institution that is a success, and it's a fact. We have to solidify this fact. We want to develop it even further. I'm very grateful for those tectonic changes in the corporate management, and also it was with your help quite possible to remove Suspilne from the government and governmental influence. I read the latest interview of my colleague Zora Balasania, who, by the way, did not ban me, and I feel his pain, and I feel his concern because he wanted to do so many things, but he couldn't. And many people don't want to talk about those circumstances that stood in the way. That's unfortunate. The team who's going to come with me will do all possible and also impossible to make sure that those dreams come true. People who dream about making a good independent organization. In my program, I present a system of ideas and a vision about the future. I don't need to read this text right now because it already has been dissected into bits and pieces. And also, Mr. Dovzhenko helped with explaining these ideas. And I'd like to thank the Supervisory Council who spent a lot of time to discuss my program. And these competitors are my colleagues as well. And I respect them very much. I'm going to tell you a secret. From among all the candidates, I really would like to see all of them in some key positions. And I'm honest. And I'm talking about this right now because everyone has experience and everyone wants to continue developing Suspilne in Ukraine. So let me mention 10 key priority areas. Number one, rational and efficient use of financial resources. Secondly, the priority of developing own content. And I expect to have a good staggered assistance from the donors and the Council of Europe. Then the priority to creative component instead of admin, and that's an item 3 which we have to focus. Fourth, a technical re-equipment based on clear and long-term planning, because today we have to have a breakthrough, a generational breakthrough. We do not have time to catch up and then to complain. Number 5, establish comfortable working conditions. And this is not populism. This means fair, clear system of remuneration, social packages, social benefits, and transparent plan for career growth. Number 6, European international experience, which is telling us about the popularity of regional media who, by default, are closer to the local communities. So we have to rethink the role of regional broadcasters and their function, and we want to have good, fully fledged local function and decentralization. Number 7, we have to continue developing our coverage. We want to get new licenses, and that is very good. We want to continue getting licenses. We want to make sure that Ukrainian radio is expanding because they have a very good team and also have technical solutions and some out of the box solutions. And then the culture TV channel has to become fully Ukrainian. And you have 20 seconds, Andriy. Right, synergies. Right. So what I wanted to mention as well I am open as much as I can for dialogue and for cooperation. I am open before the team of professionals who share the mission and the values of Suspilne, and I am ready to start implementing the most ambitious plans. I have one more thing to say. Ms. Sally Mitsova mentioned previously about the principles, standards. Those things are very close to me, and BBC broadcaster is really a role model. The stakeholders and everything about stakeholders is also key. So your time is up. No, no, you had 20 more seconds on top of your time, so I cannot allow you present anymore. So you, when you respond to questions, you can add everything you wanted to say. You know how they do this in public speaking. So I have a question. In your program, you talk in depth about personnel. And I will quote, you say, low competence and theoretical knowledge of employees actually destroys Suspilne. And you're talking about low financial motivation, low personnel requirements. So how are you going to address the personnel issue and how your reform of personnel is going to look like, which you already plan to launch in 2021? Thank you very much for your question. But 3 minutes ago, I spoke about this. I want to establish good working conditions. Employees have to be proud of working for Suspilne. Well, what are your specific actions in this regard? We would like to use the system of pay grades. That is a success story which I support fully. But today we are talking about a fair introduction of the system and flexible approaches to possible change. And I guarantee that if I have this opportunity, I will do everything I can. I will show my competencies in this regard. And I will bring in high quality people who understand development, who understand their career paths, and their work in the company will be very prestigious, however difficult. But what are the key topics of your reform? Of your we spoke about the personnel. Now let's talk about management and reform in management. Well, speaking about that, I can tell you that we have to decentralize. So we have to have branches in place. And we now are focusing on the HQ right now. So 4,000 plus people we have in total. So half of that is employed in the HQ. So we have to decentralize. And that's how we can make sure that admin block is able to solve issues quickly. And that's how you address this question number one about loyalty of employees of the company. I understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your answers. Vitaly, your question to Andrei Shapovalov. Traditionally, no question. Thank you. Good. No question. Oksana Tsibuля, your question. I want to specify things. One important item. What is the difference between strategy or concept that is now in Suspilne and what you suggest? One word, content. Difference is in content and the viewer. How to engage the viewer to the processes that are taking place in Suspilne, to the content that we develop. Thank you. Mykola, your question. After I read your program, comparing with your speech today, some misunderstanding arises. So I ask the question. It seemed to me that you are confusing things with the values of Suspilne. You think that the main stakeholder is authority. So my question, why do you insist so much? You are trying to bring Suspilne to serving the interest of local interests, local forces. You misunderstood me. Maybe I didn't explain it very precisely. Talking about authorities, talking about authority of power, I meant the state of Ukraine. But according to the constitution, it's the people of Ukraine who has this highest power. And we cannot reduce the importance of this article of constitution. It's not correct. When we turn on Suspilne, I don't see there a representative of the state that were delegated by the people. It's not correct. People who watch Suspilne, they may start thinking that in Ukraine we don't have authorities, we don't have the state. Your suspicion that you expressed, they are not true. No work with stakeholder should be related with the values of Suspilne. Nicola Poterayev was speaking at the opening part. He is representative of the power of authorities. We must cooperate with him. I don't think that you will put him into the group of enemies of Suspilne. And I want to remind you what Sally Ratonitsova said. Her vision and her principle, BBC, for me personally, is an example of Suspilne. And I share the motto stakeholder. BBC is showing what authorities are doing, and then society decides whether they have elected the proper people into authority or not. That's the influence that I want to achieve. I have a surprise now to all of you. You were very brief, you were saving time. I want to thank all of you for your presentations, for your questions and answers. And since we save some time, I will allow myself to ask one more question to each of the candidates. So, Vitaly, the question to you. In your program, you mentioned, and you said it today, in the fourth year, you will be among 5 best TV channels in Ukraine. But how the channel with the social mission as the basis can compete in rating with commercial channels that are guided by different type of logic. The way other public broadcasters compete with commercial broadcasters the world over. Social content could have high rating, could be very topical. In fact, partially the projects that we sometimes disrespect that are shown on commercial channels could be shown on Suspilne as well. I shall give you example. A millionaire in hiding or undercover millionaire program. You disclose the way of thinking of a millionaire, a person who has big money, how he contacts with common people. Same may happen with production of serial movies, cinema. A serial movie To Catch Kaidash was very popular. It could be shown on Suspilne as well. A great number of movies that must develop ethical thinking and freedom thinking are in the libraries, and they will never be part of commercial broadcast. Like film, German production, Experiment Wave 2. You must just watch it. I don't understand why Donbass of producer Lozinski was not shown broadly. This film about Donbass should be shown on Suspilne. In the system of their Kino state company, some of their films should be in Suspilne already yesterday. Thank you very much for exhaustive answers. Oksana, the question to you. On the basis of analysis of your program, I want to ask, when you mention brand, says up to now UT1 brand is more recognizable than the other. So you plan to develop marketing policy brand on UT1? Yeah, the quotation. No, not at all. Not at all. I didn't mean that at all. All those who are aware of that, first it was called UA, now it's Suspilne, now there is difference in on-plan. It's a problem how it is called. Even my opponents will agree. We must come to one brand. I didn't mean UT1. I say regrettably, when I ask people in the street, UT1, people in the street say, no, it doesn't exist. It must be Suspilne. Thank you. Mykola, question to you. You propose in one of the sections of your program, which is quite detailed, instead of enlarging of branches, to create hyper-local network of informers at the level of rayon. So what is the model, economic model? Seems to me this year, starting with May or June, we have a grant project in 3 regions, 3 oblasts as a pilot project. 6 persons in each oblast, videographer and a journalist that work for several hromadas, for several communities. Administrative structure has changed in Ukraine, so they cover several hromadas. And for the next year, if we include them all in our staff all over the country, only operational expenditures for salary will constitute additional 2 or 3 million per month. So that means 24 by 36, the increase. So we shall test it, this micro pilot project with support of Matra from Netherlands, and we shall test how it works, which equipment they need, because since after decentralization and power comes to community, we conducted research with experts on decentralization, and we move closer to community, to hromada, to show what real people at grassroots level live. Andrei, question to you. I expected that much will be said about financial model, but it didn't happen. You suggest to create aggressive commercial strategy to promote a company at the market of small and medium-sized advertisers. Can you explain to me what you mean and why small and medium-sized businessmen will be interested in supporting Suspilne? Thank you for your question. What I mean, first of all, I mean regional branches of Suspilne that broadcast 24 hours. And as I mentioned in my program, mostly they have more viewers than UA First has. Advertisement there at the local level doesn't cost too much. But what my colleague said, the biggest coverage is now in the hands of regional broadcast, and potential for advertiser lies in the region. Aggressive policy, aggressive marketing in the region can provide results. But I would come several pages in my program back and emphasize again, content is the main thing. Interesting content, and the viewer will come, and the advertiser will come. And the instrument that we use is aggressive marketing. You should see it like that. Thank you. I thank you all, colleagues, for your answers. And now we switch to one final question. That will be the same for all of you. Vitaly will be first, then Oksana, Mykola, and Andrei. I suggest such a mental experiment, but to some of you it will not be even mental, but real. It was real for you and could be real in the future. Just imagine you won the competition. Your program won. You are head of the management board of Suspilne broadcaster, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the year, your budget funding is reduced by 50%. Very painful, but you should get prepared for such stresses. Which articles of expenditure will be cut off and which will remain as priority expenditures? Vitaly. I'm used to working with small budget. First of all, optimal broadcasting network will be formed, and all economical expenditures will be cut off. When I managed City Channel, total number of staff was 220. And we were covering 70% of air time, so it was our own production. It's no problem to work with small budget. Oksana. I don't want to take criminal liability, so I will finance the protected articles of expenditure, the targeted expenditure, and optimization of the staff. What do you mean by optimization of staff? To review salaries. I know now bonuses are paid, but if funding is cut off, bonuses will be cut off or maybe reduced. Salaries are quite high. Situation is better now. When I left my previous job, we were paying bonuses. Probably bonuses will cut off. Maybe we review those who work for outsourcing and reject some of the outsourcing projects. Clear. Thank you, Mykola. For me, it will be easier because I know figures better than my colleagues. I'm responsible for that now. Talking about cutting budget by 50%, so this is 1.2 billion hryvnias. Previous was 1.2, now it's 1.5. So we're on the verge of death. So we shall pay utilities, partial broadcasting remain, some analog broadcasting in near border areas will be rejected. As regards outsourcing of the content, almost everything will be cut off. That means that the company will remain working in a very economical regime, and we can live up to the end of the year. Now the company is planning 3 scenario of development, the optimal, the maximum, and the minimal. And we calculate the minimal, like it happened last year, 1.2 billion. How to live with that, we know it. Thank you. Andriy. Thank you for your question. If staff optimization should happen, I will reduce my salary and salary of members of the board. But I have grants, and I have a good experience with grants. And having grants, we shall avoid situation that someone wants to suffocate Suspilne and suffocate freedom of speech in Ukraine. Clear. Thank you. So, colleagues, we have finalized the debate stage of the competition. Thank you very much indeed, once again, for providing very precise, very significant answer, keeping up to the time limit. Honestly speaking, I expected that we shall extend the time limit, but we saved some time. That means you are all thirsty to work, to talk less, but to work more. Great. What I wish to you that the best of you will win. And now I would like to give the floor to the person to whom many of you referred during the discussion. I want to mention Sally Brownton-Mitsova. Your comments, please, your reflections regarding programs, regarding what you heard, take into account the principles that you mentioned. The floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. I would firstly like to thank you, Andrei, for some excellent moderating and excellent questions. Andrei, I think you mentioned BBC as an example, as one to aspire to. We don't have this kind of a process in the UK. We had a new chairman of the board appointed last year, was appointed by Queen's Counsel, which is, i.e., the government. The chairman is a donor of the Conservative Party, which is now in government. And there's a lot of research that has been shown that in the last few years, the BBC has really struggled to have this challenging role that I said. It's not just about balance. It's about asking the tough questions. It's about really thinking about what is in the public interest. Yeah. So I would say don't always assume that the best examples are out there. I heard in each one of these programs some really excellent ideas. I heard excellent ideas about programs in the public interest, for news, for regional content, for children's television and online program, right? Children's content is fundamental in terms of the role of the public service broadcaster. And in many countries, it is only the public service broadcaster that is producing domestic children's content in the national language, originally in the national language with national characters, etc. So this is an important thing to be thinking about. I heard some creative ideas for restructuring, for decentralizing, for making use of new technology and new services. Yeah, and whoever is successful, I encourage you, don't hold back. Right? Think big, think creatively in terms of how you can use new services, because it isn't just about efficiency. There are a lot of efficiencies that can be gained by maximizing cross-platform, cross-fertilization across platforms, etc. But it is also about meeting your audience where they are now, yeah? and in the ways that they want to interact with content. Yeah, and definitely I advise all of you use research, right? Use your researchers. Partnering with academic institutions, with civil society groups, etc., can be excellent ways of gaining that link to the public, the understanding of the public's needs, without having to pay for it out of your restricted budgets yourselves. Yeah. So I say this was an excellent experience in terms of seeing what I think a really transparent and accountable process can be. Well done to all of you for putting yourselves out there and exposing yourselves, not just to questions from the moderator, but also from each other. It was an excellent process.
Okay, thank you very much. З нами була Салі Браутон-Міцова, консультант.
Thank you. This was Sally Broughton-Mitzwa, and she is the consultant from the Council of Europe, and she reflected a little bit about what she heard and read in the programs of our candidates. So I will remind you that we have four shortlisted candidates, Mr. Dokulenko, Ms. Tsibula, Mr. Chernotitsky, and Mr. Shapovalov. So unfortunately, we have to close very soon. Why I say unfortunately? Because I still had a lot of questions, quotes, which I wanted to mention for you. Everything is color-coded, and I'd love to stay with you until the end of the day, but we all have other jobs to do. And I'm gonna ask Stan Nurlov.
Would you like to have some closing remarks and say good luck to the candidates? Не знаю, чи чує нас.
Can you hear us, Ambassador? Maybe Mikita would like to reflect very briefly without giving assessment of candidates. Of course, I cannot give assessments because it will impact the selection process. That's exactly what I meant.
Thank you, first of all, for moderating the day.
Sorry, Mr. Nurlov, please,
Yes,
we
I can hear you.
could hear you.
Sorry. Sorry. Yes, I hear you. I hear
Yes,
you.
some closing remarks from you.
Yes,
please.
Absolutely. Was the sound. So thank you, first of all, Andre, for moderating today. That you are also among colleagues to a certain extent, so that is also a challenging job. Thank you very much to the candidates, as you rightly said, Sally rightly said, for putting themselves out there and challenging for this important position. Thank you to Sally, of course, for great work with the team and for the project team. Thank you very much to our members of the Rada, who will eventually, hopefully, give you the framework that you're all asking for. And to the candidates, I can only say, may the may one of you win, and may you do the right thing afterwards. We, as the Council of Europe, are proud with the funding, obviously, from the EU, to be able to put in place the advisory functions and on the framework that you yourself have adopted. That's what we can do. You fill the content of it. You go out there and spread the balanced information that is needed in the modern world. You are the ones who, in the end, train the journalists. You are also the one who, in the end, will be responsible. We will, of course, remain here. We will remain open to your asks for technical assistance from our side, and we will remain tuned in to your channel, so to speak. With these words, I will wish all of the candidates the best of luck, and thank you once again so much for putting yourself out there and for having done such huge work, which is until elected voluntary work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stan Nurlov, голова Офісу Ради Європи в Україні.
So Stan Nurlov, the head of the Council of Europe office in Ukraine. Now, Mikita, you have the floor. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. I hope everything is okay. I'm coming back to things I wanted to say. Now, I've heard and I've seen the participants, and they are good experts, which actually makes me happy because I know that there are people who are ready to invest themselves, years of their lives, to develop the public broadcaster in Ukraine. And without giving preference to anyone, I just want to say that it would be very good if all these people would work for Suspilne and invest into its development. But we will see. And I wish success everyone who took part in this competition. Participating in this process is already a good professional merit, and it will be an addition to your professional portfolio. To finalize, I just want to say that on several occasions they said that public broadcaster is not about ratings. However, I want to mention that Suspilne, in my view, is a very important independent institution of the democratic society in Ukraine. In any civilized country, public broadcasters have this role, so it's not really about ratings, but colleagues. Suspilne is about impacting, influencing people. So I am convinced that all of the participants, the future chairperson and the management board, they will all apply efforts to make sure that the public broadcaster has influence in this country because we are talking about democratic institution. If it has influence and weight, that means that in this country democracy will become stronger. Thank you, Mikita. Thank you so much. This was the chairman of the Parliamentary Humanitarian and Information Policy. And right now we are supposed to close this important event. I'd like to thank everybody who took part. I'd like to thank the experts who analyzed the programs. And those who will take part in further selection, I'd like to thank the SADAM, the Reanimation Package of Reform, and the Council of Europe project that supports media freedom in Ukraine. Andrei Kulakov, Internews Ukraine Program Director, is saying goodbye to all of you. Very soon we will learn about the name of the new chairperson of the public broadcaster. And there will be processes, and there are processes in the development of this entity that are irreversible. And this agency will keep on developing, and we will gain more trust, and this organization will be able to produce more content, high quality content, and gain more and more ratings. And it's important for the public to know that if they need clear, verified information, they should know which button to press on their remote and which radio channel to listen and which online resource to visit. So be safe and goodbye.